Welcome everybody to this Honeybee Watch Symposium today. My name is Steve Rogenstein. I'm Honeybee Watch's project director and your host today. I'm joined by Arrigo, our science director. Today we have three very special guests who will talk about their inspirational projects and experiences with bees and beekeeping in Africa. And then that will be followed by a panel discussion and then a Q&A. To start, I will briefly introduce Honeybee Watch. We are an international coalition tasked with better understanding how free-living honeybees survive via natural selection with little to no human intervention. And by free living, we mean bees that have chosen where they want to live, whether that's in a tree cavity, in a cliffside, in a cave, in the burrow of an animal, in the ground, buildings, and even abandoned beehives. The aim of Honeybee Watch is to find nature-based solutions to lower mortality rates, to increase beekeeping sustainability, and ultimately to protect these threatened populations. In our 5 years, we have already gotten more than 2,500 nest sites on 5 continents from research partners and participating citizen scientists. But if you visit our mapping platform, sadly, you'll see that Africa has been very low. We have low representation, but we hope to change that. So if you're based in Africa or you visited there or you know of people and they know of free living nest sites, we really encourage you to participate and plot those on the map and join the Honeybee Watch citizen science aspects. And Arrigo, if you could just drop into the chat where people can find the mapping platform. So some of the initiatives that we have partaken of in the last 5 years, a couple of years ago, we formed a task force to collaborate with the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, also known as IUCN. That is the international governing body that determines the red list status of species. So they range from vulnerable to threatened to endangered to extinct or near extinction. And we're working with them to reassess the red list status of Apis mellifera in Europe. After about 2 years, we're ready to conclude that and submit a report. And hopefully that will get published before the end of this year, so stay tuned for that. Hopefully we'll have some interesting news. And if you attended our last symposium in March, you already know that we're part of a consortium that applied for and was awarded a €1 million Biodiversa Plus grant from the European Commission to extensively study free-living colonies, which I may call FLCs at some point, and that's just because it's easier to say. And we'll extensively be studying them in France, Ireland, Poland, Portugal, and Sweden for 3 years. And if you want to learn more about that, on our resources webpage, we posted that video from March. And with our primary mission of forming an international coalition, we've organized this Symposia Series, which is now in its 3rd year, to connect the community of free-living honeybee enthusiasts. Now I'll briefly contextualize the Honeybee Watch Symposia Series, especially for our new visitors. First of all, it's super exciting for us that more than 330 people have signed up for today's event. And already we are at 72 people. So thank you for your support. Thank you for attending. So 3 years ago, we launched this series as a means to bring the community together, to introduce scientists and experts from around the world to one another, to facilitate the exchange of their expertise and data and best practices, to introduce you, the audience, to their work, and as I said before, to introduce you to one another. Through this Symposia series, we're also committed to exploring and discussing challenging topics. In the first year, we explored monitoring protocols, which led to an open source document that's free to download and use on our resources page. So if you know of a free living nest site, what we ask is that you register it in the mapping platform and then monitor it at least 4 times a year. And you can use that protocol from our resources page. In the first year of the series, we also discussed data rights and sharing, as well as how to define wild in the context of free living colonies. which continues to challenge us. Actually, I just had a conversation yesterday, and somebody was asking about the wild bees, and I said, "Are you talking about the wild native solitary bees? Are you talking about wild honeybees?" So there's always confusion about this word, which is why we choose free living colonies. In our second year, we explored bee lining, tree cavities, whether wild honeybees are wild bees too, which I'm sure you know the answer to that, and also best practices for communicating and recruiting for citizen science projects like Honeybee Watch. And this year we started in March with an introduction to Free Bee, that European Commission funded study. Today we move to Africa, and in September, we will hear from 3 PhD students' current research and data findings in South Africa, in Ireland and the UK, as well as Slovakia. And Matusz, I saw that you're here, so he will be speaking in September. Thank you for attending. And then to round out the year in December, we'll explore bee-related policy issues. More information can be found on our events webpage. So that brings us to today's program, titled Africa, Nature-Based Traditions and Techniques. As many of you know, Honeybee Watch is making a concerted effort to expand into Africa. We claim to be global, but we kind of fall short on that. And because Africa comprises the native geographic range of Apis mellifera, it's a natural place for us to have a presence. And we want to have a meaningful presence. And to that end, last month we gathered 80 bee scientists, beekeepers, foresters, farmers, and policymakers from 25 countries on the continent for a working webinar to explore the opportunities and challenges and needs and general interest in studying and protecting free-living colonies there. And today's program continues in that vein and is a testament to our commitment to that. So we have a real treat for you today. We'll hear from 3 very passionate people who represent different lands, different projects, different perspectives, and in advance, we're grateful for their participation. Last but not least, our third guest is Jason, who is in Kenya, and he's one of these people that just seems to be connected to everyone. He took a honey sensory course in Bologna with Raffaele Dalio, who's one of the founders and board members of Honeybee Watch, who said to me afterwards, "You have to get in touch with this guy." And additionally, Nina in Kenya, who was one of our speakers in last month, she said that you need to connect with this guy as well. And then when we met with our speakers last week, it turns out that he and Tibeebu had met in Kenya a few times ago. So although he's relatively new to beekeeping, his enthusiasm for bees is voracious and his passion contagious. He's a social media influencer, an entrepreneur, and visionary. He's also a comedian, and he's been spreading awareness of and passion for the bees throughout the lands. And we're thrilled to have you here today for him to give us a glimpse into his backstory, the comparisons between modern and traditional beekeeping that he's experiencing in Kenya, and his experiences with some of the indigenous tribes. So, are you ready?
Okay.
Super, thank you.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. And I don't know how to, like Tibeebu, this is my first time making a presentation via Zoom. And if I have any challenges, just be patient with me. So for context, my name is Jason Runo. I am a very young beekeeper. So honestly, I do not consider myself a beekeeping expert. Um, One of the things that I love about what I do is I founded a business called OK Honey Market. And in the last 5 years, what we've been doing is I've been traveling around the country, empowering and working with lots of beekeepers and farmers, but more importantly, learning and trying to educate consumers. So my background is in comedy. I am a producer. I produce and host one of Nairobi's biggest improv comedy show called Because You Said So. So I'm not like a beekeeping expert, but like Steve mentioned, I am extremely passionate about bees. It's been one of the most life-changing things that I have done. I have traveled around the country and traveled outside the country as well, just experiencing bees. Last year, I had a very unique opportunity to work with the Gurung tribe in Nepal. These are amazing, amazing people. And what I found is their experience beekeeping with us is very, very similar. And I've asked Arigo to share a link with you, which you can watch the film. It's called Asante Nyuki. We shot it in Nepal, working with the mud honey hunters, looking for mud honey. I don't know if you've heard of mud honey. It's a honey that makes you hallucinate. So for context today, I will be talking about traditional beekeeping vis-a-vis modern beekeeping, because when Steve shared the topic in terms of nature-based traditions and techniques, I was like, wow, like, and then seeing that I'm speaking with Tibeebu and Janet, I was like, whoa, I'm not the right person to share about techniques. But what I want to draw is similarities and things that I think we can learn from each other. So for context, a traditional beekeeper is someone, say perhaps, who has a very, very, very close relationship with bees. Very close relationship with bees. They may or may not have beehives, in that they would go to the natural habitat and interact with colonies that are free living, so to speak. In the African context, honey still does play a very important role. A very good example is this weekend. This weekend, I was attending a friend's traditional wedding, and my responsibility as a beekeeper was to make sure that there was honey available, which was on the list of the things that are needed in terms of bride price. We also used honey for food preservation, and then also for ceremony, because most of our traditional ceremonies, the drink, like in my community, which is a Kikuyu, is traditional honey wine, which is called Muratina. So we have a very close relationship. So when I'm referencing traditional beekeepers, I'm referencing communities that have very, very close relationships with the bees, and may have traditional. I don't know if having a traditional beehive then just qualifies you as a traditional log hive qualifies you to be a traditional beekeeper, but allow me to just draw experiences from working with modern beekeepers and traditional beekeepers, and how those two can cross-pollinate. When I was asked to speak about these techniques, I thought it would be an interesting thing to talk about the soft skills, not the technical skills, because I mean, Janet and Tibeebu are experts in that. I'm just someone who has experienced working with traditional beekeepers, going on honey hunting missions and such. So technically, I don't know, I have observed, but I wanted to draw more to the soft skills, which in life, again, soft skills are not taught, it's just things you observe and learn. So, the first very simple technique is observing of bees and bee behavior. For you to observe something over a very long period of time, it means that you have a very close relationship. This is one thing I've noticed with traditional beekeepers. These people, for example, I've worked with like the Maasai in Kenya, the Marakwet, who go into we went into the Cherangani forest for a honey hunting mission. And one of the things that I noticed is that, and you will always notice, even when I went to Nepal, beekeepers spend so much time not just looking at the beehives, actually looking at the environment. And as Dr. Lowore stated, that beekeepers are actually forest keepers. These guys will spend so much time observing, observing, and observing. They will talk about a flower that has flowered and died. They will talk about something that's happening, like even leaves changing color. And if you hang out with them, you'll realize that one thing they talk about all the time is just what they're seeing. And when you look, it's actually very small details. For this reason, I do believe that when you look at a honeycomb, that's a crystal, that's like a crystal ball of what's happening in that environment. It's a crystal ball of what's happening like within the larger ecosystem. So observation, I find most times is heavily overlooked by people who we call modern beekeepers. And when I say modern beekeepers, um, like I'm saying, the traditional beekeeping is more focused on the relationship with the bee, while modern beekeeping is focused a lot on input and output. Like one beehive can give you X number of kilos because it's more for commercial purposes. This other one is more for a lifestyle. And I find if you want to be a very good and successful beekeeper, please, 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 and this is purely from my observation, it's find a good balance between both. Love your environment. If you love your environment, the love will show in your final products, be it the honey, be it the pollen. So you find like even some communities, for example, they revere the environment so much, like, and I've seen this with all of them, with the Samburu, even in Nepal, they always pray before they go into the forest, before they go on these honey hunting missions. They ask the universe for permission to go and get this product, this thing that is so healing to them and their communities. So observation is very, very important. The other most simple technique that is so important is teamwork. Teamwork truly does make the dream work. If you've worked with traditional beekeepers, you will notice that a lot of times these missions are very dangerous. Very dangerous. Like, I have pictures of me on which I should have put here, um, on a tree that's several feet tall. Like, if you fall, there's not a chance that you're going to survive. There's fire involved. There is a lot of things involved, like, for example, if I can also mention the experience in Nepal, the making of the ladder, which is something the whole team that's doing the honey hunting that they will do together, making sure that it's okay for your friend to use. Among the different farmers that I have worked with, I can 100% say this with a lot of confidence. The farmers who are doing beekeeping with their communities usually are the most successful farmers. I'll say that again. The farmers who are doing the beekeeping with their involving their neighbors and their partners, creating cooperatives and stuff, those are the most successful beekeepers than the ones who are doing it alone. I highly, highly encourage anybody, if there's anything you can learn from traditional beekeepers, is the value of teamwork. Work with your neighbor, because think about this. It makes no sense if I'm keeping beehives on my plot of land and my neighbor next door is using pesticides on his crops. It's much better to involve him and teach him about beekeeping so that we can work together. And this gives us a unified mission. It sort of brings, there's a level of respect and love that we'll have for each other that makes this a success. It's the same thing with traditional beekeepers. Anytime they move together. They do things together. Decisions are made as a community. You will never hear that somebody just went to the forest alone, within these communities, just went to the forest alone to collect honey. No, it's always a community thing. So that's one thing that I feel modern beekeepers can learn from traditional beekeepers. The advantages of these two main techniques are intergenerational learning. This is a key thing, and I think modern beekeepers should learn from traditional beekeepers in this sense. Anytime I have walked with, I went into the forest with these traditional beekeepers, one thing you noticed is that there was consistent learning from the top going down, that is from the elders going down, sharing knowledge with the young men, saying, you see, when you see this flower looking this way, it means this in the environment. When you see this leaf looking this color, it means this. And they would spend the day just walking. And in the same breath, you'll find the old man is learning new things in terms of maybe the young man is showing him things on his phone, um, maybe pictures of what other beekeepers are doing in other places. And you find that it's a beautiful experience where two generations are just so united by this one wonderful insect and this wonderful mission. So intergenerational learning, we are losing a lot of indigenous knowledge, mainly in Africa, because our tradition and our history is mostly spoken. We pass knowledge from one community to another verbally. So you find that there's a disconnect in some communities, like Tibeebu said. It's true. You find there's an old man with a wealth of knowledge about this environment, but because maybe the grandchild or the child is no longer interested and maybe has moved to the city, then that old man, when he dies, he will die with so much knowledge. So as beekeepers, modern beekeepers, what we can learn is please work with schools, work with younger kids, mentor, no matter how little you know, just teach what you know to the younger generation. And also be willing to learn. So visit other beekeepers, see what they're doing, learn from them. And it's gonna make your beekeeping such an exciting journey. I promise you this. The other obvious advantage is increased community cohesion. And I'm giving an example like in Nepal, a lot of these missions could easily result in death. And you find like even when they're having, say, discussions in terms of when to go harvest, when shall we go, and what shall we do, how many people are going to come with us, a lot of these meetings with traditional beekeepers, you find they don't only talk about matters beekeeping. These meetings also become like the community notice board. I don't know if that makes sense. So they will talk about. So like I've been in a hunting mission where that during that period I was there and we were working in Cherangani Forest in Kenya with traditional beekeepers. There was a family that had been bereaved within the community, and it was during this mission planning meeting that the beekeepers also discussed we are going to do A, B, C, and D for the family as a way to support them. So you see, this granted they're here for beekeeping, but other community matters are being discussed. So this is something that I noticed that communities that are doing beekeeping together usually have a very close, beautiful community, and it's all I could feel was so much love and just camaraderie and just cohesion in these communities. And these are the two main things and two advantages that I've learned from my experience interacting with traditional beekeepers. And with that, I think I thank you so much for your time. Um, you can reach out to me. I'd love to visit all beekeepers. I love to visit beekeepers. In fact, one thing I do is when I teach, I always give the traditional beekeepers or just any beekeeper I interact with an opportunity to also teach so that I also learn from them. I thank you all. I thank you, Steve. This has been very interesting, and I'm glad you're all here. Thank you.
And thank you to you, Jason. I can't believe you've only been beekeeping for 5 years. And you have done so much, and you've met so many people and been exposed to so many different styles. And what I love also is that you're spreading your appreciation for them, the enthusiasm, the passion, and it's contagious. So hopefully you have inspired many people
Thank
here.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Uh,